welcome to another episode of Video Game Logic. Today's episode was recorded on May the 21st, 2019. I'm your host, Gaming Psychologist, and with me, as always, although not for long,
Caffeine Rage.
On today's show, we will of course be discussing the games that we have played. We're going to be talking about the Epic Fails sale. The Division 2 raid has been beaten on PC, but console players still can't finish it.
They finished it much later. Amending that because, time delay.
Valve's latest Steam blog addresses positive review bombing. Valve lets players avoid toxic people in Dota 2, but they charge for the privilege. Loot box laws are shutting down 2 Nintendo mobile titles in Belgium. We'll have our weekly community corner with a discussion on game night and a Steam discovery queue. Timestamps will be in the show notes following their respective topics. Hello, Rage.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm alright. Well, I hope you figured that one out by now.
Yeah, I don't know how long we can make that a running joke where that I ask you how you were, and you're like, well, I hope you figured it out by now, because we've been talking for an hour, or something like that. And calling it out makes it even less funny than it already was.
Well, to be fair, it wasn't funny to begin with.
That's true. Very true.
Yeah, I had an interesting time on my shopping trip. Nearly got ran down by a car.
Yeah.
So, that would have, put a damper on recording night.
Yeah, at least temporarily, or for, the near future.
Yeah, until you replace me.
Oh, I couldn't.
Yeah, essentially someone decided, stop signs are for losers, and they cut through a parking lot at 30 plus miles an hour while staring at their phone. And my rideshare was having me, go down the block to meet them. So nearly took me out. But the person almost took out a utility pole at the same time. So, yeah, that would have been messy.
Some small amount of karma.
They killed me, but, wrapped their car around the utility pole at the same time. But, yeah, ended up kind of throwing my back out, almost just dodging out of the way. I mean, they missed me anyway, but, that was, insurance, and I was rather sore for the weekend, so I didn't play too much.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat, but for different reasons. I had a whole bunch of time set aside this weekend initially, play some games, some new stuff. I'm going to be talking very briefly about Anthem, but I had intended to play that a lot more than I got to. But I had some stuff come up this weekend. We needed to help some friends out with some things, and then I wound up having to do a bunch of yard work because it dawned on me, so I'm house sitting for my parents next weekend for Memorial Day weekend. They're going to Texas for a family reunion because my dad's from Texas. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to be home, which means that if I don't mow the entire yard, then the backyard is going to go 3 weeks without getting mowed again. And it's getting warmer and sunnier, and the grass and all of that sort of brush, or really thick grass we've got back there, is going to get grown up, and then it'll be a nightmare to try and mow it. And then I was like, well, if I've got to do that, I'm going to be working in the yard all morning. There's some other things that need to be done, and I'll just get them done, and then I'll get brownie points with Katie, and she won't yell at me for procrastinating things. So I spent all Saturday morning working in the yard, and then Saturday afternoon when I was going to play games and relax, needed to help some friends out. Katie was helping them move, and then turns out that some stuff went down, and then they needed food, and I was they needed food, and they were moving, so they didn't really have a place to eat. So then they came to get food from our house for dinner, and I had to clean and cook because Katie was helping them. It was my whole afternoon on Saturday. And then Sunday went kind of awry as well. So I also did not get much time to play new games. I played a lot more Mario Party with my kid and some things like Train Valley 2, and I did the equivalent of dailies in EVE Online, but, we're not going to talk about all those things. because there's nothing really new to say about them.
So, how about what I did play?
Yeah.
I didn't really have any odd interactions on the bus outside of one guy just randomly started talking about him growing up and beating every living shit out of his dad, which was weird. There's something about me that people just randomly talk to me. Maybe it's just the fact, hey, I can talk to the cripple. He won't walk away.
Yeah, but I am excited to hear about your first game. So why don't you go ahead and tell me?
So, the Guild of Dungeoneering. This was a Twitch game, or giveaway game, like 2 or 3 months ago. And it's been kind of on the back burner to go back and check out at some point. And I realized Sunday night, I haven't played a damn thing because I've been semi-laid up with just my back hurting like hell. So I decided to pick up something that, was pretty easy to play and, get a decent opinion of it. And I was kind of wrong because I'm not sure what I think about this game because it's a little strange. So the Guild of Dungeoneering is another deck building game. That seems to be my thing lately. I don't know why. Meets a roguelite. So sort of, Slay the Tower, is it?
Slay the Spire?
Slay the Spire, yeah. Sort of like that, but not really, because it's sort of Slay the Spire meets Darkest Dungeon, but sort of an anti-Darkest Dungeon. And I'll get to why in just a moment. So there's two different essentially areas of gameplay. There's the Guild of Dungeoneering itself, where you're building up the guild and unlocking various things, unlocking more loot that you can find in the dungeons, unlocking new character classes, new heroes to take in, or Dungeoneers as they call them, and just building out your various options. You eventually unlock blessings that you can take into the dungeon, which for the first level of either affect the first 2 battles, goes into effect after the first 2 battles, depending on which it is. So, like, one is plus physical damage for the first 2 battles. One is plus 2 health for the first 2 battles. But then there's, like, the loot one that is extra loot after the first 2 battles, which is a more long-term item. It's an interesting concept. And there's a lot of interesting things here. There's a lot of humor in the game, which I really like. There's a bard that constantly sings about your actions. So whenever you unlock a new class, he has like I would say a 10 or 15 second song about the class. That's usually pretty humorous. Almost limerickish. And, of course, I'm blanking on any of them right now. Whenever you succeed or fail, you get a limerick. Whenever you unlock a new area, you get another little song. And the game is very charming in that, where you have this kind of semi-chill music, but then the narrator kind of pokes fun at you for losing. But not Gladys, level of meanness, but, a little bit of kind of just ribbing you, like, you failed, let's try it again. Which I appreciated. Because I call this an anti-Darkest Dungeon, where in Darkest Dungeon, losing a high-level character is very painful. And in this, at times you kind of want to throw the game and actually kill some of your own people. And that comes down to just how random the game is. And I realize, random in a roguelite. Gee, there's something new. But no, this is... okay. You do not directly control the Dungeoneer, alright? Instead, the Dungeoneer has a set of rules they follow. So, they constantly want to explore the dungeon. They constantly want to get loot. Some classes constantly want to get into fights. And you build the dungeon around them out of a deck of cards, which includes the dungeon itself, the monsters, and also various loot. So gold coins, silver coins, gems, chests, that sort of thing. And on top of that, you have wells that could be either a positive or negative influence for the next fight or permanently, depending on the well you pull out of the random lot. And altars of fate, I believe they were called, where you get divine favor that you can cash in during a battle to draw an extra card or burn a card to get rid of one to get a different one. Or I can't remember what the third level is, but the more favor you have, the more options you have to draw extra cards or to manipulate the battles. So there's that random element to begin with, and sometimes various characters get scarred, which are essentially a either positive or negative trait. There's two different types. There's ones that just flat out stat bonuses. They get an extra health, or they'll have an extra card to start off with. But then there's the negative ones, like they are thinking very highly in themselves. So they're constantly going to seek out higher level monsters to begin with. So if there's like a level 4 monster, I could take him. Let's go. No, you can't. You have to try to level them up. And the only way you can level them up is by fighting either higher level or same level monsters, either that you place onto the dungeon itself or that are there as chunks of the dungeon that start off with. And there's various rule sets, like in some instances, you may get attacked at a certain point by the boss that you have to defeat for that particular adventure. For another, you may be chased by the boss monster and you're trying to desperately level up and get powerful enough to be able to defeat the monster. And if you lose, that character is gone. Which sometimes is a good thing because of those negative traits that could be picked up. But the negative traits could also be counterbalanced if you get that particular trait again and turned into a kind of a mixture of a positive and negative trait. So I can't recall the trait exactly, but the one that makes them seek out higher level monsters, well, they may get extra damage against them, or they may get extra health against them. That sort of thing, to try to counterbalance it, but you have to get luck of the draw to counteract that negative trait. So, you can see where the randoms is starting to come in, and it's one of those things that I'm not sure how I feel about the game, just because of it's a lot of luck of the draw. But if you're looking for that sort of thing, it's a pretty charming little game. I've unlocked 5 or 6 different character classes, and the character classes essentially respawn after one adventure. So, let's say you killed the ranger, for example. Well, they say, okay, well, you killed that guy. We're going to put out some wanted posters and get a new one. Go on another adventure while we go look around, essentially. And different characters have different strengths and weaknesses. Like the ranger, their thing is all their attacks are ranged, which for that, it gives a haste to all their attacks, so they always attack first. If that isn't the case, if you don't have a quick attack, the monster always attacks first, which puts you at a disadvantage to begin with. And I mentioned this was a deck building game. As you progress through the dungeons, you're getting loot, and you have to counterbalance what you get. So you may get a helmet that gives you extra strength, but it also gives you a card of stupidity, which does absolutely nothing. And unlike my game last week, having cards that do nothing are very detrimental to you because they're eating up a lot of space, and your hand size is pretty small in this. You only start with 3 cards to begin with, and you're only ever drawing 1 extra card. And some monster types love to try to mill you, to essentially make it so that you're constantly top decking. You are able to block those some of the time, but other times you want to have more card draw. So there's a very interesting element of trying to balance out your deck and balance out your stats at the same time. So you may have some tough decisions. Okay, well, if I replace the pointy stick with the ice cream scoop, and no, I'm not joking, both of those are actually weapons in the game. I may lose some physical damage, but I may gain some magical damage, which is treated differently. There's essentially 3 types of block in the game. The card game itself is actually fairly simple. Each side plays a card. Monster side goes first unless you have either ranged, which makes it so that you go first always, or you're using a quick attack. Physical damage and magical damage are considered two different types of attack, and can be blocked by 2 different types of block, either physical block or magical block. And then there's a third type, which is a combined, which will block one of each at the same time because they go off at the same time.
Okay.
Which, like I said, it makes it for a lot more strategic options, and a lot of sitting there and thinking, okay, do I want to swap for more magical block because this dungeon has more magic creatures, or do I want to focus on a combined blocking? And each charge or block can only block damage once, but because physical and magical damage is fired off at the same time, they're considered a single round. So having a combined block sometimes is an advantage, sometimes it isn't. Like I said, there's some interesting strategic choices, but at the same time, just that randomness can be very off-putting, I think, to a lot of people. If you start to understand just how the dungeon works and how essentially the rule set of the Dungeoneer, how they move, you can manipulate it to some degree, but at the same time, you're still at the mercy of the cards. And getting someone that's gotten some positive traits, essentially, killed can be very detrimental. But at the same time, every time you go on an adventure, your Dungeoneer starts at level 1 with no gear. So, only thing you're ever really losing is that character for one adventure and any positive traits that they may have, which makes it so that the Dungeoneers feel a lot more disposable than a character like in a Darkest Dungeon, for example, where you don't feel as attached to them. And that, like I said, at some points, whenever you have just bad rolls of the dice, you kind of want to get rid of them. And sometimes it's just a no-win scenario. You get a dungeon that you're getting bad cards to build a layout, so you're not able to level up properly, and you may just get in a scenario where there's no way for you to win, no matter what, which can be very frustrating, but at the same time, that's kind of the name of the game. I'm trying to think if there's anything else to really highlight, but I'm not sure if there is. I haven't gotten terribly far in it. The Twitch version had both the main expansions. I will say that it does feel a little overpriced for what it is. On Steam, I believe it's $15 for the base game plus, it's $15 for the base game plus another, well, it's $17 for all the DLC, but that's including the soundtrack, which, like I said, the soundtrack, it's very humorous. But at the same time, it's one of those things that over time, I'm a little concerned about it being repetitive because I'm already starting to get the same little ditties over and over again for loss. And even victories, actually, which makes it so that it's not something I want to play for a long period of time, which is a little disheartening because it is a very charming game, but, right?
Yeah, I mean, little things like that can make a big difference in a game where that it's random. You might be going through things quickly. It can get old listening to the same tracks over and over again. Kill some of the charm.
Mm-hmm. Especially since the game only, the ditties are only like 5 or 10 seconds. They're pretty short, so having only a few of them is a little bit of a downer. But I understand, this is an indie title, so you can't have the full orchestrated soundtrack. But at the same time, yeah, it's one of those games that it's a roguelite that feels like it relies too much on the randomness. But at the same time, I do applaud them for trying something very different, in that you're building the actual dungeon itself.
Yeah, I like interesting concepts like that. And I mean, I like the way that this game sounds. I liked it when I first saw it 2 or 3 years ago when Total Biscuit did a WTF is of it. And you make it sound like something that I would be interested in still.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have to go see, because there was a little bit of time where I missed some stuff that was on Twitch. So I may have missed it, but I may have it. If not, I should look into buying it on Steam, maybe at the upcoming sale. It's not super expensive anyways.
Yeah, it's a little bit expensive for what I think it is, especially with all the DLC, because the DLC, it offers more classes, and the favor system is actually part of one of the DLCs, which I think does a good way to balance out a little bit of the randomness. But at the same time, you have to get those rooms, and you also have to lure the Dungeoneer into them, which can be a little tricky at times, particularly once they level up a bit. Thankfully, they heal in between battles, so it's not as of detriment to get them multiple battles to try to get their loot up. But at the same time, it could be a little bit of a roll of the dice, just because, they may completely ignore where you want to go, and they'll go somewhere completely different. Which I do get why people are very frustrated with this game, because, yeah, it is frustrating that, okay, no, go over here and fight this lower level guy to try to get some stuff. No, don't drink from that fountain. It's poison. You fool. But I will say, if you're interested in card games to begin with, I think it's worth a check out at least. It's very charming, but that charm could be a bit of a detriment as well, just because it could wear off pretty damn quickly. It's not one that you play for a long time. Actually, do they have this on mobile? This feels almost like a better mobile game than a PC game.
Don't know.
Yes, they do.
Oh, how much is it on mobile?
It is $6. I'm
what
not
does
sure.
It include?
It looks like it has the updates for free, so a retroactive PC tax. I would say this is probably a better mobile title, actually, just because it is mobile is a better platform to just have a very short plays.
Yeah. Well, we'll find out. I just bought it.
Next time on VGL Podcast.
There we go. I've got
I'm looking at their other games now.
I had like $10 in my Google Play wallet or whatever from doing surveys and stuff that's just been building up. So.
Yeah, and you got to use it sooner or later.
Yeah, I think it expires after a year.
Yeah, but as you buy stuff, it uses the oldest currency first.
Yeah, but
so they are kind of about that. Huh, this is actually the same company that did the mobile version of Banner Saga.
So we'll see how good it is on mobile next week, probably, maybe in 2 weeks.
But yeah, it says. Watch out for ice cream headaches. Our second adventure pack is available as a free update. So, yeah, it has the DLC. And I will say that a lot of the interface felt like it was built around mobile. There was a lot of click and drag to move through stuff. If it wasn't built for mobile, it's definitely mobile friendly.
Yeah.
So, I guess we'll see how you feel about it.
Indeed. I'm looking forward to it. Are you ready to talk about the one that we share that's a sort of game?
Yeah,
that's
I think
cheat?
so.
All right, so for community game night this week, we played Tabletop again. We played Pandemic. And so it's
somewhat requested one, if I recall correctly, but I can't recall who was asking for it.
Yeah, we just played the base game. There's several expansions, and then there's something that you found or knew of and showed us called Legacy, which we're looking at potentially playing. That's includes some like RPG like elements, and it plays out a storyline over multiple play sessions. It looks very interesting. I'm very interested in that, but we needed to. Everyone that played with us last night, except for I think Jim, had played before, but it was like we were all rusty, so we had to.
Yeah, I think our big thing was that we didn't burn cards quickly enough.
Yeah, but I mean, in case you don't know, Pandemic is a board game where that you and the other players are cooperating to try and stop the spread of 4 separate diseases. And if the outbreaks get out of hand or go on too long, you lose. And I mean, there's specific conditions for that, which I don't think we need to get into. But basically, if the game goes on for too long or too many cities have outbreaks in them, then you lose. Everyone becomes diseased, and I don't know, I guess there's an apocalypse or something.
Everybody turns into you, constantly sick.
There are multiple sort of character type cards that each have, special abilities. There's a number of actions that you can perform on a turn. The different special cards have got special actions that some of them like reduce the cost for things or allow you to circumvent some of the complexities of a couple of rules. There's one that I played that allows you to essentially just move people around on the board to other people. And then you can, it plays a lot like the captain, actually, from, what's the firefighter game? Dang it.
Flashpoint?
Yeah, Flashpoint. Because you can do stuff, but you can spend all of your action points to move other players around too, and direct them. So, but anyways, it's a really fun game. An issue that we've had brought up a couple of times when playing specifically tabletop simulators, that we've had some games that have lasted a long time with 1 or 2 people sitting out because they get taken out early in the game, and then they're just sitting there watching a game play out, and there's not a lot of just like chit chat because we're playing trying to win. So we were looking for some cooperative board games, and Pandemic is, I think, a more sort of classic,
one of the most powerful, one of the most popular ones.
Yeah. It had been a while, several years probably, since I had played Pandemic. I played it maybe twice before, but I had a blast playing last night. I mean, we lost. We ended up losing. We just went with sort of the standard game rules, and we probably should have played with the beginner rules, which include a couple of characters that have very powerful special abilities that can help. But we didn't do that. So we were all sort of rusty or learning how to play, and we didn't have any of the most useful sort of abilities. We wound up losing. We did good for a while.
Yeah.
But there just came a certain point where that it got out of hand. And then once it got out of hand, it was all over.
Yeah, which is kind of the point of the Pandemic,
Yeah. But what we were doing is we were all being very conservative with our cards, taking probably longer than we should to move around the board, where we should have been playing cards. So there's cards that represent each of the cities, and you use, each of the cities falls into a sort of a color block. And if you collect enough of the cards from a same color, that's how you can research the cure for a disease. But you can also spend those cards to move around the map. And they say I've got a card for New York, and I can be anywhere on the map. If I want to go to New York, I can play that card. And then you discard it, it's out of the game, but you get instantly travel over to New York. So there's pros and cons to doing things like that. You move around the board faster, take care of problems faster, but then you're spending cards, so potentially you make it more difficult to be able to cure one of the diseases. And we weren't doing that. We were all, for the most part, saving our cards. We did it a few times, but because we didn't have the abilities that let people clear out a lot more infection cubes, which is how the levels of the cities are marked for how badly infected they are, we were wasting a lot of our action points moving more slowly. I think it's called by ferrying, but essentially you move to an adjacent city which uses one of your actions.
Yeah, ferry or drive, depending on land or sea.
Yeah. But I mean, I really like Pandemic. I love playing tabletop. Tabletop is one of my favorite things that we do for game night because there are so few board games, good, interesting board games that I get to play with people. Because most people in my life play, Monopoly and
they think that's the height of tabletop gaming.
Yeah, or
and they play Monopoly wrong.
Yeah, everyone hates playing Monopoly with me. I'm like, if I'm going to play Monopoly, we're going to use the rules, motherfucker. We're going to use the actual rules, and then everyone hates it. I've learned, how to game Monopoly. I've learned all the statistics for, most landed on spaces and things like that. And as long as I get a few
you're one of those.
I want to ruin people from playing Monopoly. I used to love it. I used to love Monopoly, but then I realized, there's a whole new world of interesting board games out here. So now I just try and ruin it for people. One of the biggest fights that I ever had with Katie in the early stages of our relationship was over Monopoly. And I was being an asshole. But, I was 19 or 20. This is before we were married. I think I was 20. So, I was just being an asshole. I deserved it. I deserved all of what she said to me. But anyways, I'm not derailing into my past relationship issues too much. But yeah, Pandemic is an excellent board game. I don't know. Do you have anything to say or add or?
Not terribly so. I mean, it's just, losing is part of the game. So it's, losing is fun. It's the Dwarf Fortress of board games.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do agree that we just, didn't expend our cards like we should have. So we let things, bubble a bit much.
Yeah. Another thing we did that I didn't think it mattered as much at first, but then you pointed out to me was that you're only supposed to play with 4 people if you're not using one of the expansions that lets you play with more. But we were playing with 5 people. And, the card deck runs out at the same rate with 5 people as it does with 4 people, but everyone gets effectively less turns, which means that more chances for infection and spreading the infection can happen. So it's more difficult for one person to cover sort of an area.
Yeah, it makes people less responsive, and also because the deck is spread between 5 instead of 4, it spreads out the number of cards, so there's less chance of getting the 5 cards you need of the same color to get the cure.
Yeah.
Which is also a problem.
We could come up with a couple of custom rules to play with more than 4 people, because something that would help was the trading mechanic. How the trading mechanic reads in the rules is that 2 people have to be in the same city, and it has to be the city that you want to trade the card in. So let's say that I want to give you, or give Rage the card for New York. He and I both have to be in New York, and then I have to give him the New York card. I think a good custom rule if you're going to play with more than 4 people is just allow trading of any cards as long as both players are in the same city.
Yeah, perhaps. It's just one of those things that it's meant to make it so that it's a pain in the ass to do so, because one of the roles make it so that you only need 4 of a particular color, which is a lot easier to get than 5 whenever your max hand size is 7. And that's also the other thing, is that we ended up losing a lot of cards to discard just because we hoarded cards way too much.
Yeah. I did not. I think I was the only one that didn't have to discard.
No, I didn't have to discard.
Oh, okay.
I don't think so.
But there are some people that have to discard multiple times.
Yeah. Which definitely hurt things.
Some of that, too, could be eliminated with some more practice. Once, we get a better handle on how we play and how we sort of communicate and cooperate as a table. But, it's one of those things. It'll take practice. A little bit of work. We're going to do it again for game night. I'll mention this in the actual game night session, but the next time we have community game night, which is in 2 weeks, because, house sitting for my parents this weekend, I won't be back until sometime on Monday, and then I'm going to have to do all the stuff I usually do on the weekend to get ready for work for the week. So I'm just going to kind of call it. But anyways, so in 2 weeks, we're going to try again. We're going to play with the more beginner rules and utilize some of the stuff that it recommends, like using those specific characters. The medic, and then we talked about in the quarantine specialist, because the medic can clear 3 cubes from every city that they clear from. And then the quarantine specialist prevents the spread of outbreaks from the city that they're in and every adjacent city.
Yeah, which if you keep them in a city that has a lot of connections could cover a good chunk of a region. Because the way the outbreaks and the infections work is that if a city has an outbreak, which they get 3 or more than 3 of the same color cube, they have an outbreak, and that adds a cube to all adjacent cities.
Yep, and they can chain.
Yeah, and which is what actually killed us in the end. I mean, we were pretty much doomed anyway.
Yeah, we had like 3 outbreaks in the same turn just because it caused chain reaction.
Yeah, and if you hit 8 outbreaks, it's considered the diseases are out of control and you lose. But it also made it so that there were a lot more cities primed for another outbreak that were getting disease counters on them anyway.
Yeah.
And one of the interesting mechanics of the game is how they simulate the kind of the hotspots of disease. By every time an epidemic card is pulled, all the previous infection cards get shuffled plus 1 new one from the bottom of the deck. Then it's placed back on top of the deck, so you're constantly hitting the same cards over and over again.
Yeah, that makes it really difficult. And it can be frustrating, but it also makes sense with how actual outbreaks in recorded history have worked. It's a neat mechanic. But, I mean, we had some places on the map that were completely untouched because, you know, we never drew the cards for their cities. Or for those cities. And then we had some places that just kept getting hit over and over and over.
Yeah, India was just screwed.
Yeah. And then we lost the Americas. We lost both North and South America. And that was how we lost the game.
Yeah, that was mostly due to a chain outbreak starting in southern Mexico. Southern Mexico or Central America. Just hit there and just kind of just cascaded.
Yeah. But it's a really fun game. I'm Tabletop has sold me on many a board game to purchase in the real world, and Pandemic is now on my list of games to buy.
And Pandemic Legacy, because I walked you through that.
Yeah, Legacy is cool. I have a hard enough time, though, in my real life getting people to get together for any sort of RPG. I imagine that would be an issue with this, too, which is why I think it's very suited to Tabletop.
Especially since the physical version is very destructive as well. The main difference, at least I should say at the start, because Pandemic Legacy is an evolving game. So as you both win and lose games of it, you unlock extra rules that get added as stickers to the rule cards. It changes the way cities behave, because as cities get more and more epidemics to them, it essentially plays out over the course of a year. They become harder to travel to as the cities essentially slowly succumb to rioting and fall. So at one point, in order to go to a city, you may have to expend 2 cards from your hand, which becomes very difficult.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, if you win, you start getting extra bonuses. The characters that you play essentially level up. They may gain new traits. Any diseases that you cure, you could add a helpful mutation to them to make it so that it's easier to cure it next time around. So it's it's an interesting mechanic. And in the physical version, it's the changes are permanent. Until, you essentially beat the campaign.
Yeah, and it tells you to actually physically destroy cards and things. I wouldn't do that. I would just put them in the box and like a little thing.
Well, the problem is stickers.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about the stickers.
Yeah, because the stickers go between PlayStations, and even failing a game, it still advances the timeline.
Yeah.
And even the legacy deck. The legacy deck is essentially your storyline. You don't add cards back to the deck, and they're not numbered.
I might try and come up with a system in the physical version where I wouldn't have to do all of that stuff. That way I could keep it to use again. Because, I mean, it's kind of a play once and you're done thing. If you destroy your cards and put stickers all over everything, you can't take them off.
Mm-hmm.
Which, you know...
Say there with a putty knife and trying to pull the sticker off.
Yeah.
Putty knife and a hairdryer. Come on. Maybe a dry erase board or something.
Maybe. Or could do like card sleeves, and then you could put the stickers and stuff on the sleeves. Although,
yeah, but then
you use the stickers. I don't know. There's bound to be a way to do it.
Yeah, which I actually think I figured out how to do the stickers on the tabletop version. Decals.
I've never used decals in tabletop. I mean, I know what a decal is. I can kind of picture in my mind how it would work, but...
Yeah, which the way it works is that some stickers actually go on the city cards to turn them into a city or an event card. The stickers go onto the characters to add both pluses and negatives to them. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting mechanics to the game, and that's why I wanted to play it.
Yeah. You know, we kind of...
And there's also a pity box as well, which I found amusing. Essentially, if you lose, 4 games in a row, you open up this one box. It's full of, like, sealed boxes and closed envelopes, the physical version, that you're not supposed to touch until the game specifically tells you through the legacy deck.
Yeah.
Which I just found fascinating.
But we kind of tossed this idea out to the group. There were a couple people that said they wanted to think about it. We could always just run our own game.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure Katie would play.
Perhaps.
I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Have to talk some more with the group first. I mean, we just sprung this idea out on Monday, so.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, Pandemic. Good game. Don't know if I have anything else really to say about it at this point in time. But, I mean, I had a good time last night.
Yeah, I enjoyed it as well.
Okie dokie. Well, then now it's my turn to talk about my only new video game I played this week, which is Anthem. So, with all of the massive negative news and how poorly it's doing by pretty much every conceivable metric, I decided to go ahead and play it. I didn't buy it. I got the EA Gold, their Games Pass thing. And I got the version that lets you have like all of their games. It was $15 for 1 month. So I'm gonna play Anthem basically for $15 and then probably never touch it again. But I've played it a few hours, probably about 6-7 hours total this past week. And for, the size of game that it is, I'm still within the first half of the game. I've basically only been mainlining the story to get that down. I'm not really interested in loot grinding, even though I really enjoy looter shooters. It's more for the gameplay loop than just getting the loot itself. I don't really care. Like, I enjoyed The Division a ton, but none of the guns in The Division are memorable because they're basically real guns that sometimes have different colors on them. And Anthem's weapons are pretty similar in that regard. They're just... they're not real guns, but they're just generic rifle, machine gun, SMG, rocket launcher, whatever. And where Anthem sort of sticks out is its visual customization system and then its abilities. Each of the javelins has fairly unique abilities. So in case you've somehow missed all of this sort of terminology and everything for Anthem. It's BioWare looter shooter where that you're basically in these Iron Man suits called javelins. There's 4 different ones, and these are the equivalent of your character classes. You can switch at will as you unlock them. You unlock one every 5 levels or 6 levels. Like you can get them in any order. Like the sort of intro tutorial area has you play in the Ranger, which is like the jack of all trades one. But as soon as you complete sort of the tutorial set of missions, you can choose which one you actually want for your first one. It doesn't limit you in any way. There's the Ranger, which is jack of all trades, kind of middle ground. There's the Titan, which is big, heavy, slow, uses the most powerful weapons, can take the most punishment, but, the slowest. Designed much more as like a tank, although it can output some pretty massive DPS. There's the Warlock, which is focused more on using elemental abilities. It plays kind of like a wizard, hence why it's called the Warlock. It's glass cannon sort of thing. You don't want to get up close and personal. You want to stay far away, focus on sniping and then using the abilities. There's... what's the 4th one? I forget what it's called. It plays the most like a Warframe. It's extremely fast, melee focused, high burst DPS. You want to get in and out as much as you can. It's the only one that can triple jump, and it can do the most dodging in terms of like when you're flying around or if you're zipping around on the ground. It has the best dodges. So those are the 4 main classes or javelins or suits or whatever you want to call them. Most of the equipment is shared. There are a couple of weapons that are limited to the Titan as the only javelin that can use the miniguns and grenade launchers. But otherwise, every javelin can use every other weapon. So you can just you can create loadouts and share weapons among javelins if you've got one particular weapon with some good bonuses, or that you just happen to like the way it feels, and share it amongst them if you want to switch back and forth. But in general, I'm in 2 minds about this game. There's some aspects that I really love about Anthem. It looks great. The moment-to-moment gameplay is fantastic. And the fact that I personally am not don't really care all that much about the actual loot. The fact that Anthem's loot system sucks doesn't bother me on a personal level. I recognize that it's bad, but, it doesn't bother me. And then there's a lot of...
weird. You're playing a looter shooter for no loot.
I know. And then there's a lot of things in there that are hooks, that say like, hey, this, BioWare did have a hand in some of this. There's a lot of story hooks that could go somewhere interesting in a more traditional RPG. They don't, which is, why I'm in 2 minds about it. There's some very interesting characters that you run into. The background lore of the game itself is, I think, fascinating. It seems pretty straightforward to me. I've seen a lot of stuff online about how people are confused, and it's like they never explain anything. And some of the explanations are definitely in sort of their codex section for this game, which they always are. In, Mass Effect and Dragon Age both have extensive encyclopedias in the game about stuff. But the gist of what's going on so far has made sense. I mean, maybe there's some stuff more convoluted later on, but I've not been lost about sort of the key story components. So the background lore is great. They're the people that you interact with as part of like what in a traditional BioWare game would be like your team or your squad or whatever that you can pick from, the characters to come with you. They're all really interesting. At least, at face value. But then it gets to the point where it's like, okay, well, this game is, very shallow. There's very minimal amount of side quests, very minimal amount of interaction I can have with these people, because it's focused on being the, always online games of service looter shooter thing. So they want you to be out chasing down loot and going through and grinding and working on these missions and things. And only coming back to the fort to essentially collect quests and rewards. And I see what this game could have been if they had changed almost nothing about it. But instead of, if they'd kept all the gameplay, if they'd kept the same sort of direction for the game, except instead of saying, let's make it an online games as service game, let's make it a single player RPG type game, where that you do have a lot more of these traditional RPG elements, much deeper storylines, quest lines, interactions with characters. They could even keep it fairly separated between, like, you go out into the overworld map for your missions and to explore and do stuff, and then you come back to Fort Tarsus, and that's mostly character, interactions with your team, advancing the story, poking around and seeing what you can do, building relationships, just all of that stuff that you think of when you think of Mass Effect or Dragon Age. But and the game itself works fairly well as a single player experience for going out and doing the missions and stuff. It's designed to scale based on how many people are in your team, and there's only been a couple of instances where I have been with other real players. There's a few missions that have some NPCs come with you for one reason or another, but I've only actually worked with real players a couple of times, so the game plays very well individually, and there's separate dialogue for whether or not you're with someone or not. So the game already has it built in, where that you can run these missions solo, and it just acknowledges you, the player, and then the game progresses at the pace that you want to do, instead of that classic thing where it's like, oh, and there goes the level 20-something guy zooming off at the beginning because he knows where to go because he's done it before, and I don't. So I'm just going to stand here a minute and wait for the dialogue and the marker to pop up. So the gameplay itself works as fully single player. I could understand if they had issues with maybe AI pathing or, the AI handling the flight system in a non-scripted way, so you don't have the squad of people going with you. But it still works, just you going out completely by yourself, doing stuff, and then coming back as needed. So it's frustrating, and it makes me sad to think, like, they have built an excellent sort of skeleton of a game, or an excellent, what's the way to say it? It's like, you look at it and, on its face, and you're like, aha, this looks wonderful, and you've got all of this stuff built in here. And then it's like, you peek behind the curtain, and it's like, oh, there's actually nothing here. It's very shallow, which sucks, because it's got a lot of hooks to where it could be deep. And, it also falls into that trap of, well, maybe they've got more storyline stuff planned, but because it's on their roadmap or whatever, and the game's basically dead, we'll never know how the rest of the story turns out.
Oh, don't worry, they'll novelize it like Mass Effect Andromeda, right?
Yeah. Or put it in comic books. But
well, to be fair, I think the story is probably a little too shallow for a comic book. Maybe a comic strip.
Touche. So, I don't feel like I have wasted my money or my time. I've genuinely enjoyed what I have played in it so far. And I went into it with expectations that I think properly set. I think if I had jumped on this game, day one, I would have been disappointed. Because, I was hoping for more. And going back, months to where we talked about this game in the past, I had said multiple times, like, I want it to be good. I really want it to be good because I love this concept and this idea of, basically role-playing Iron Man. But I don't expect it to be good. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't expect it to be good. So I think my expectations have been on the level for a long time. But waiting to this point in post-launch to actually pick it up and play it, I didn't have any misgivings about what it was. It's still a little bit saddening to look at it and be like, you could have actually done something with this if you'd had some leadership and been allowed to turn it into something more traditional. Like, it could have been a really...
But hey, BioWare magic.
Yeah. That magic fizzled out in more ways than one on this one.
Well, to be fair, the magic's been kind of dead for a while.
Yeah. But I'm at the point in the story where I don't know I mean, we've already talked about this, but I don't know if you, as in the listener, remembers when the game first came out, there was this huge complaint about the game artificially gaining your progress behind a bunch of random ass challenges at a certain point in the story. I'm there, but the game, and I didn't realize this, you told me this, that they patched it and fixed this or changed it, but the game tracks your progress on all of those things from the moment you start playing. So I got to that quest, and I already had like 3/4 of the challenges completed, and everything else I can grab in free roam. So that's kind of what I'm going to be doing next time I hop on and
still
play.
gaining your progress for a bullshit reason.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not like excusing it, but you know, things like that are better. And if there have been other issues along the way that have been fixed, then I haven't had to deal with those. Actually, loading times is one that's a lot better. They changed the way that the loading system works, because essentially every time you did anything, you would have to choose to be spit back either into the fort, which is this, you know, the single player portion of the fort, or I'm drawing a blank on what it's called, but like a little sort of community area where you can see other players running around, and then you would launch another mission from there instead of being able to just pick the next mission to launch and go directly on that, because the gear matters so little in this game up until apparently you get to the max level. Like, I've seen some posts on Reddit talking about when the gear score and stuff actually starts to make a difference, and it's not for a long time. So you can just go mission to mission or straight into free roam if you need to, or if you want to, without having to jump back to Fort Tarsus, and that saves a lot of loading times. But
I really hope you're having Shatner pauses right about now, because
I paused for a second to like think.
No, you had a couple long pauses there.
Well, I mean, I paused a couple of times to think. I don't know quite how bad it was, but I saw my Discord chat thing go to red for a second and then come back. But I did have a couple of pauses. But
also
anyways,
known as a Tuesday night for you.
Indeed. But yeah, I mean, if there's anything else that was fixed that I don't know about, then obviously I don't know about it and it's not affecting me. But you know, overall, knowing what to expect going in, like I said, I've enjoyed my time with it so far. I don't expect I'll ever want to come back and play it again once I finish the story. And I probably wouldn't get the chance anyways, because Anthem's probably going to be dead soon-ish. So.
Yeah, I'm just reading the subreddit, and it's hilarious. The answer to, is Anthem worth buying at X dollars? Answer, no.
Yeah.
If it's not updated, then it's not a live service game. Well, true, I guess.
Yeah, you know, depending on what you want going in, you know, the $15 feels alright to me. But if you don't like this type of game, if you're not interested in this, in looter shooters or whatever, or if you want a better looter shooter, or a looter shooter with a better loot system, like it's not worth 15. Yeah, Warframe or even Destiny.
I would say Warframe, Destiny, or at least the first Division. I'm not sure how the second one handles early game loot.
Yeah. So.
But Warframe has closer to the feel of this.
Yeah. I'll probably...
And also, well, the open world areas of Warframe, it has pretty much what you wanted was instant Iron Man access through the Arcwings.
Yeah.
Now, once you research it, which our guild has it, you're able to instantly call it down and be able to fly as much as you want. Oh, and there's also hoverboards.
Woo, hoverboards.
And not crappy little, boards with two wheels on them. I'm talking fairly fast, actually off the ground hoverboards, Marty McFly style.
Woo. My brain, for some reason, just went Freebird. But, yeah, that's Anthem. I'll probably talk about it one more time once I actually beat the story and just, sort of wrap up how that went and discuss it. But, I mean, I'm not going to even try and do raids or any of the,
you don't want to be disappointed by the loot?
Yeah, I'm not going to do their strongholds, which is the equivalent of the dungeons. Like, I might do them one time just to see how they are, but I'm not interested in running them over and over again. And I've heard that or read that a constant problem is that people will start them, get through like the first boss to grab the loot chest and then leave, because that's faster than playing through the whole thing, and there's no difference in the loot table the farther you go in.
Yeah, which is, I would say, a slight oversight.
Yeah, just a little. Very
and
small.
Also, at least according to what I read last time around, you don't have a guaranteed chance of getting good loot at all. So, one of the developer streams, they've called it Purple Rain. Essentially, you get epics and not legendaries, or their equivalent of it, which is purple.
Yeah.
Well, in one of the streams, as they were talking about loot problems, they opened up one of the final chests in the Stronghold, and it was all epics, and all the developers just went quiet. It was hilarious. But needless to say that if you're looking for a good looter shooter, this is not it. If you're looking for a good BioWare game, this is definitely not it. If you want to pretend to be Iron Man for a while, well, this is probably your best option on PC. Or I would say in general, there hasn't been a good Iron Man game, has there?
No. I've heard that the Iron Man VR game is interesting, but I don't think it's out yet. I think it's just like pre-release stuff. So, but the Iron Man movie tie-in games are garbage. And other than that, I'm not sure that there's been any Iron Man game. I mean, Iron Man features in some other Marvel games. Iron Man's pretty good in Lego Marvel Superheroes.
I was about to say, wait a minute, the Lego games, there's your Iron Man game.
Yeah, but Lego Marvel Superheroes continues to lose my save data, so I'm mad at it. I'm not playing it. My kids pretty much stopped asking to play it, too, because of Mario Party, so...
Yeah, but it has to be more enjoyable than Anthem, right?
Yeah. But yeah.
I just had a thought. Let's see. Settings, preferences. I wonder if you could set a Dropbox folder on the save site so that it constantly updates, and whenever it loses it, you can just refresh from Dropbox.
I don't know. I could probably do that on PC, but it's on Xbox that I've got it, so...
Well, there's your problem. You're a peasant.
Well, my kid's not quite versed in keyboard and mouse yet.
And you're starting him on gamepad? Gonna have to call Child Protective Services now.
He's big into the Wiimote right now. He likes to point at things.
Well, how about we point and laugh at something?
Let's do that. Let's move on to our first news topic of the night, which is slightly editorialized, although given the headlines that I've seen, it does sound honestly...
I would say this is actually kind compared to some of the headlines I've seen.
Very true. The Epic Fail Sale. So...
And plus it rhymes, so, that's even better.
Indeed, almost as good as alliteration.
Yeah, but not quite. So, if you haven't been paying attention to gaming news, there's been a slight sale over on the Epic Game Store because every single site decided they had to cover it. And I believe clusterfuck would be the proper term for this.
Yeah. So Epic, I mean, they're having a sale on the games in their store. And there are several things that they have done, which at face value are like, oh, that's pretty cool. That's Epic trying to be, big and competitive against Steam again. But they were implemented so badly, it's just a fucking nightmare. So one of the things that they did was that they're offering $10 off on any game that is more than $14.99, correct? Am I remembering that correctly? Because I'm not reading
Yeah,
this.
it was $14.99. Any game, and that includes pre-orders. Anything on their store was $10 off. And here's the kind of the kicker is that they were taking out their own pocket. They highlighted the fact that the developers still got their full cut.
Mm-hmm. And you're
So
like, oh, wow,
that's
that
one thing.
sounds great. Epic is, like, continuing to push this whole we're good to publishers thing. But they didn't tell anyone that they were doing it.
Including the publishers.
Including the publishers. So for some of them, it doesn't matter. But for others, they have specific written contracts for having things like price parity with all platforms. So that includes consoles, other digital markets. Then with the pre-orders, if you get a game if you pre-order a game for less than what it is, you're devaluing the product and creating potential disparity between customers or consumers for PR nightmares.
And here's the kicker, all right? Or at least the kicker for this particular part is because of how Epic handles the regional pricing. Some games was hitting the price in some regions, but not others.
Mm-hmm. So some games you could get for a discount in one region, but not for a discount in another, which caused some issues because there was, I can't remember the specific game.
Hades from Supergiant Games. They actually missed the price, and they kind of panicked, and they raised the price by $5, which brought the price on all regions up by that. So then that caused more backlash because they were already getting backlash for not having the sale on all regions. So then they had to drop the price again back to where it was. And it's just, what the fuck?
Yeah, and that's just the first issue. There's more that we'll get to, more things that they did, but this is just the first one. So, my brain just took a left turn. I'm sorry.
Oh, did you at least have the blinker on?
Nope, it just swerved, and I had to crash.
It's just...
Oh, okay, so here's where my brain was going with this. Because of this, some games have, at least temporarily, I don't think anyone has said that they've permanently done it, but some games have temporarily
I was treating that as a separate option because there was no opt-out option.
Right.
Because they never told anyone about this. They sprung on... Well, they didn't spring on everyone, but some major publishers wasn't informed about this. So, because of contracts or because they just didn't want to have their game devalued, actually had to pull their game completely from the Epic Game Store. And this includes some pre-order stuff. This includes some games that's been out for a while. It's just gone. Because the Epic Game Store doesn't have the option to opt out of the sale.
Mm-hmm. I think the most notable game that did it was Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2.
Borderlands 3 as well, and that has a massive campaign going on right now. So for as long as this sale goes on, which I actually don't know when it ends, you can't pre-order it on PC, and that's the only place that you could get the damn thing. Because of the exclusivity contract that they have.
Mm-hmm.
So, tell me again how, it's not a problem to have a game on only one store. And you can't really say that about Steam because Steam still has third-party sellers of Steam keys.
So, the sale goes until June 13th. So that's that's 3 more weeks.
Yeah, which I think late June is when the Valve Summer Sale starts.
Yeah, I think they said June 20th was the leaked date, or something like that.
Well, I'm doing a quick search. Date leaks for June 25th. Fucking autoplay videos. It's not even related to this. It's a fucking Fortnite video. Why is this on a article about Steam Summer Sale dates?
I don't know.
Sorry, I might have a slight psychotic fucking hatred about that.
We were talking about Epic Games, and it knew, so it gave you Fortnite.
But yeah, pretty much it ends just before the Steam Summer Sale. Let's be perfectly honest here. That's why this is so haphazardly thrown together, is that the date leaked, and it just happens to end the week beforehand. Really?
Yeah. So, that's issue 1, this whole contract thing. developers didn't know, games been pulled. Actually, that's a combination of issues.
Yeah,
but that's...
I was treating that as two different ones because of all of that. And because the Epic Game Store is so feature rich.
Yeah, the other big issue or biggest issue is people who are buying multiple games on the Epic Store because of the sale are triggering the fraud protection because there's no shopping cart, so you can't buy multiple items at once. So you have to make multiple individual purchases. And there's a limit.
And that's triggering something in their anti-fraud, and it's actually banning accounts.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the thing is that I'm not sure if it's on the Epic Game Store, but I know if you got locked out of Fortnite, you're getting locked out of your Epic Game Store account as well. And you couldn't download your games, or at least for a time being. I'm not sure if they fixed that or not.
I'm going quickly scanning through this article that we've got talking about that says,
but yeah, I'm going to say amateur hour. I mean, more so than usual.
Yeah. I just telling people that they can't buy games when they're trying, like locking their accounts when they're trying to buy games. Just, God, that's
not even have a
stupid.
shopping cart and trying to do a mega sale where people are going to buy a lot of games.
I wonder if they didn't expect how many people will buy games on PC when they go on sale. Like, you know, they have learned no lessons from Steam, so I didn't expect them to pay attention to anything that's gone on with Steam sales. So I wonder if they just weren't expecting people to want to buy multiple games when they go on sale. Like, sometimes all it takes is $10 for someone to drop some money on something. And they've
especially if it's a $15 game, you know, right at that $15 threshold, and it drops down to $5.
Yeah. But I mean, you know, most of the games on their store now would have dropped at least $10 because of their $10 off deal, you know? So sometimes that's enough for people, especially like you said, but, you know, dropping something from 35 to 25, 45 to 35, like.
Well, also the pre-orders, because this applied to pre-orders as well until, you know, some of those got pulled. You know, someone that was wearing Borderlands, Borderlands is a bad example, but let's say someone pre-ordered a game for full price. Oh crap! There's $10 off. Cancel the other pre-order and get that. And while they're there, they see, this indie title's $5 here. I'll get that. Oh, I'll get this one as well. I'll get this. Oh, I'll get that. Oh, I'm locked out. Now I don't know the exact number of games for this. But the fact that it's been popping up quite frequently, I'm going to guess it's not a lot, or a lot in quick succession.
5 games, it says in this article. If you buy 5 games in a row.
How long a time frame?
It doesn't say. It just says buying just 5 games in a short period of time was enough to get his account flagged as potentially fraudulent. I would assume
that's stupid. I'm not pulling punches here. That is just brain dead.
Yeah, no, there's not a devil's advocate to play. They really screwed the pooch on this one.
It would be hilarious if it wasn't so sad. I'm laughing anyway.
Yeah, you're laughing at them, not with them.
I mean, people bitch and moan that Steam, the store goes down for, like an hour or two on the first day of the sale. But that's just that massive rush. And then the store is pretty stable for most of the sale.
Yeah.
This is the equivalent. I would say the biggest thing that Steam has had issue-wise with their Steam store during a sale was, I guess it was, 2 years ago? A year ago? No, it was 2 years ago. When they had the caching issue. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that. That was at the Christmas sale a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I mean, even that was, it was showing information, but it wasn't anything that was dangerous to know, you know?
Yeah.
there's been no, mass bans because somebody bought a game too quickly. But then again, you could throw all your sales in one shopping cart and be done.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is, I'm going to borrow the joke from Sid Alpha. Epic would be putting the cart before the horse on this if they even had the cart to begin with.
Yep, that's fair. That's very fair. Well said, Sid Alpha.
Yeah, it's just... I'm still in a disbelief of how poorly this is handled. But hey, the shopping cart's on the roadmap, so it's okay, right?
Yeah.
It makes me wonder how many people tried the Epic Game Store and are now solidly anti-Epic.
More than a few. I don't know if it's enough to make a meaningful difference because, again, the internet, there's a minority of people who yell on it a lot. But, I mean, it is making waves, and I've seen some things where developers are reacting hesitantly to...
Well, did you see the post about Terraria? I didn't put it on the docket. They said that they would never take an Epic Store exclusive contract because they felt like it was selling their soul to the devil.
Strong words,
or it was selling their soul. But, I'm editorializing a little bit. But, selling their soul typically has that connotation, doesn't it?
Ugh. Yes, indeed.
And that's the most vocal. There's been a couple coming out that said that they will not take an exclusivity deal.
Yeah. I don't think I would. Not at this point. Maybe in the first run, they would pay out enough money. And I have no idea how much money they're paying out now, but I would suspect.
Well, it was several million for just a little indie game. I shudder to even think the amount of money that they threw at Borderlands 3.
Several millions of several millions.
Because that Borderlands 3 is probably their headline game right now, at least on their upcoming games.
Yeah.
So the fact that they had to pull that from sale just because they're devaluing a game that it has this massive marketing campaign behind it right now, it's just it just shows just the they're tapping into the BioWare magic. They're just doing things and hoping it works out.
BioWare madness. I mean, they can... I don't... realistically, I have no idea how many more mistakes like this they could make before it costs them so much that it's not worth it anymore. But whenever you watch, documentaries or listen to things talking about how big companies fall, it's these sorts of things that are always the kicker to it. They make a massive, massive mistake that they could recover from, but they don't. And then they make another one, and then it starts a spiral. And, I don't know, because, they've had some little things, some little PR issues, right? But, companies survive PR issues all the time.
Yeah.
But something like
just look
this,
at EA. Right?
Something like this, though, behind the scenes, stuff that we're not going to know about or hear about for
years.
Years. I bet there are a lot of people with a lot of power in various publishing companies and the ones even behind that control the purse strings, like Tencent. Although, is it Tencent backs Epic, right?
Mm-hmm.
But even they might be, what the hell are you doing? We're giving you all this money. You're screwing up all these deals with all these other companies. I bet there's a lot of conference calls and emergency meetings that have been called trying to figure out how to correct this issue. And I bet a lot of confidence will have been shaken, that we won't hear anything about behind these closed doors.
Yeah, but at the same time, we're also dealing with Tim Sweeney here, so... Yeah.
Sweeney. I like the way he said that. Sweeney.
It's just, he's kind of, right?
Yeah.
He's, let's just go to his Twitter just to see what he's saying right now. He's retweeting a lot right now. We're trying to just waiting for things to blow over, I guess.
Doing damage control.
Let's see. Anybody speaking out on or for or on behalf of Epic makes their Epic Association clearly visible online when we've run paid promotions. Basically talking about ads. So I guess there's some controversy going on there.
Yeah, I don't know. But obviously, I'm not saying that it's over for Epic. But
no,
this could be like, in 10 years when you get so what went wrong with Epic Games? Why have they now, been bankrupted and bought by whatever company? I feel like this would be the inciting incident that's like, well, they really fucked up on this one because they thought they could get away with it or something like that, Just like, I've been listening to lots of... There's this podcast I started listening to called Business Wars that talks about these companies that, it sort of follows a narrative that goes back and forth between rival companies and things like that. And one of the first one that they did was Blockbuster versus Netflix versus HBO.
How Blockbuster had a chance to just buy Netflix outright.
Yeah, but they didn't. And then they kept making mistakes like this over and over, and it just kept costing them until they were done. And it's like, there were so many points along the way where they could have corrected it, but they didn't because of their hubris, essentially, or the hubris of the people in charge.
Yeah, there was also it was a YouTube video. I'm going to have to go dig it up for you about Redbox.
Yeah. That was, yeah.
Did you know where Redbox actually started?
No.
You'll never guess this one, but it's a restaurant chain that's associated with the color red and maybe a little bit of gold.
McDonald's?
Yep.
Huh.
It started as a sub-company of McDonald's back in the 90s when they were doing video rentals in some franchises.
That's interesting.
And they essentially split it off into its own company, and it's kind of floundering right now, to be honest, just because they can't compete with Netflix.
I mean, not nobody. Few can compete with Netflix. Amazon, Hulu, yeah. HBO.
Yeah, which Amazon, that's cheating.
Disney, when their streaming service goes live, just because they've got fuck you money. And they could operate
and they also have fuck you lawyers.
Yeah. And they own, I was about to say 50%. I don't know how much IP they actually own, but a lot of it. But anyways,
how much does Disney own? This ought to be interesting.
Between Business Wars and You're Wrong About, another podcast I listen to where they talk about stuff like this, it's like there's always like a moment, and it's like, this is the one. Like, this is the big moment, and if they course corrected, but they doubled down, and I feel like this could be that moment. If they don't course correct, if they double down and they keep doubling down, that this spells the beginning of the end. In 5 years when we get the documentary.
I'm sorry, I went to the Wikipedia page. They have a list of assets owned by the Walt Disney Company, and it's rather long.
I would imagine. So, yeah, do you have anything else to discuss regarding Epic and this whole
outside of pointing and laughing?
Yeah,
because it's just this is just one of those things that I think this at the core of it, at least some of this, is them wanting to compete before they really can. Let's take it back to Iron Man. They can't run before they could walk. And they're trying to, and they're just falling on their face over and over again because their store does not have basic functionality. They do not have the business history, or I would say the business acumen to know you do not screw over the publishers. You're trying to make this a very publisher-friendly storefront. As the going as far as saying that the storefront is made on their business deals for the most part. Screw actually getting little things like customers, right?
Yeah.
And they're so caught up on trying to out-Valve that they keep failing over and over and over again. And it makes me wonder just how leery any companies that hasn't signed giant exclusivity deals are, because they're at the whims of complete and utter fuck-ups. There's no other way you could call this.
Yeah. I mean, it's a disaster. PR nightmare, an issue with...
And the fact that several companies may have broke their contracts out of absolute no fault of their own, just due to something that the store that they're selling exclusively on PC did out of just a whim.
Yeah.
It would make me highly leery of any contract to sign to exclusivity on this. No matter how many billions, unless they agree to cover any legal fees due to their utter incompetence.
Yeah. If I was one of these publishers, I'd be going to my lawyers being like, so how do we get out of this contract? I feel like they have breached their contract with us. How do we quit this?
And that's not even including just the absolutely massive amounts of negative publicity that is circulating around games that sign these deals. Let's just see. I'm just trying to find any other games that's talked about it. Here's one from Tim Sweeney saying that Epic Store won't accept crappy games because that makes you feel better, huh?
Yeah.
Which, on the front, that's one of those things that he says that, it sounds like, well, that's not such a bad thing. But there's a balance between Steam's complete open door policy and what Epic is doing, which is what Valve used to do. Here's another one. The Epic Store won't sell unrated adults only games, so no booby games. So, there's your interest gone, right?
Wah, wah.
Considering this is kind of on his whim, it also makes me wonder just how much he's curating to his personal tastes. Right?
Yeah. Excuse me. Sorry.
Because that's one thing Valve had, or is actually continuing to have, is the visual novel. And I would say anything that has an anime aesthetic to it. Just because of the corporate structure of Valve. It seems like some of their employees just are a lot more harsh towards those types of games. So they get knocked down a little bit. It makes me wonder if that's the same thing will happen over on the Epic Game Store. Just because, it seems like it's complete amateur hour over there. So, it's something done on a complete whim, right?
Yeah.
No baptizing anime girls. Which was something I sent you earlier.
Yeah, I haven't watched it. I'm going to, but I didn't get a chance before
just
recording.
the thumbnail of that, though.
Okay. Let's scoot on over to our next news topic. No, thank you, Forbes. I don't want to accept notifications from you.
I hate that websites do that.
So, you...
Yeah, this has been, this was released the day after the Division 2 raid released, which was, console people were complaining about not being able to beat the game, or beat the newest raid. That's since changed. It's been beaten on all consoles, but it took 3 days to do so. So, yeah, the Division 2 raid has been beaten on all platforms now, but it took a lot longer on console players than it did for PC. I think that's a better title.
Yeah, so the Division raid was beaten within the first 24 hours, right, on PC, the day of release. And at the time, there were multiple raid groups on console that went through and were unable to beat it. And I don't know any of these raid groups or streamers that are mentioned, or that, supposedly tried to do it but were unable to. They just gave up because of how difficult it was. And, just looking at this, some of it has to do with PC Master Race.
Don't you mean Glorious?
Glorious PC Master Race. Because on the PC version, and one of the articles that we have talks about it, higher frame rate, more precision with keyboard and mouse allows you to be more precise, get the headshots. I mean, they don't phrase it exactly this way, but get those sweet headshots because you don't have aim assist dragging it to their chest or whatever.
That's one thing I always hated when playing a shooter with a controller.
But the sort of game design aspect of it is that you can't over level for this raid. It was set at the max gear score, so it was exemplifying the bullet sponginess of the Division, and then the only way that they were thinking that you could beat it was that you'd have to focus on grinding out weapon upgrades that give you massive damage increases, so that you could actually overcompensate for how spongy they were.
Yeah, it's a very weird thing that they had it where the raid wasn't gearing you up. Essentially, all the gear in the raid was set at the max gear score of 500, or in the 495 to 500 range. So you weren't actually getting geared up to meet the level of the raid, which is just so weird. I can't think of another game that's done raiding like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to be an MMO player. I realize MMO RPG versus MMO FPS is two different animals. But the basic mechanics of how gear works still applies, where going into a raid that doesn't give you better gear until the very end is just so weird. Because of one of the major mechanics for as long as I've raided, which was, I would say, about 11 or 12 years worth of raiding across two major MMOs, was that the raid was always a step up in gear, and you farmed the earlier stuff to essentially gear up to approach the later stuff. And a raid usually took a couple weeks, maybe a month, for the bleeding edge players to be able to beat. And I realize this is a lot bigger raids than what the Division 2 likely has. But then, slowly, the more casual players are able to trickle through as they learn the tactics and essentially over-level the bare minimum that's required. But this, you're not able to do that at all, and that's so strange to me.
Yeah. Destiny's raid, at least the first one, the only one that I've played, did feel a lot like old WoW raids in terms of scope, size and scope, and having to learn interesting mechanics for how to beat the boss. Because one of the things about old WoW raids was you'd have to learn, like, okay, what do I need to do to maybe avoid damage, or what does this phase of the raid do? Like,
yeah, that's one thing I miss about the
rules?
Old WoW raids. I didn't get to play Molten Core outside of the anniversary event of it, but having it where, okay, well, this particular boss may send out a shockwave, and you have to jump to time it, so you're jumping over it, for example. I'm just pulling a mechanic out of my ass.
Yeah.
Or this boss does a huge, powerful AoE, but during the course of the fight, blocks of ice appear, so that you could hide behind them, and they shield you, and the AoE shatters them, and you have to trick the boss to use this ability. And I believe it was actually that was an Ice Crown Citadel fight. I believe it actually was targeted on a player, and the player was able to dictate where the ice block was before it froze him. But yeah, mechanics like that, or having some sort of environmental thing, or some of them were just essentially gear check DPS traces. But yeah, it was a learning process. And the fact that the first day, the PC players were able to beat it, and this enraged the console people so much that they were calling it unbeatable. Welcome to MMOs, fellas.
Yeah, there's a certain amount of that where I'm like, okay, like this sort of gatekeeping attitude can be frustrating, but at the same time, like...
I'm trying not to gatekeep. I'm trying to explain that this is how MMOs used to be. How it wasn't handed to you. You had to work for it.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Like, depending on the attitude in which that's presented, like, raids are difficult things that you have to work to overcome. Like, that's what makes them what they are. And, you know, as gaming, I guess, has changed, the way that we approach raids now is different than how it used to be. But, you know, this provided a taste of, just a small taste of how raids used to be. And, you know,
I would love to throw some of these guys. I realize this is gatekeeping into some of the old EverQuest raids because that got absolutely batshit insane.
Yeah,
and that's just the ones I was present for. There were some that were the actual fight. I believe the in-fight for Planes of Power was several hours. There were built-in breaks, but it was pretty much a full timed experience.
Are you looking it up?
I'm just seeing how long it is to beat Planes of Time. And it's a little tough to find because Plane keeps triggering to some other things. Plus, that's also an old expansion. But yeah, it's a lot of the old raids were timed encounters, or they were very long encounters. They had very tough mechanics. They had some of them were not very obvious of what you had to do. So there was a lot of trial and error before tactics were shared between guilds, because at least in the very beginning, tactics were very closely guarded. That's the other thing that's really changed, is that there wasn't the streamer culture where you would have the world first kill happen live on Twitch. I remember the early, or all my EQ stuff and the early WoW stuff. Whenever there was a world first kill, it would be a week or so later. It would be an edited video so that they didn't give away the tactics. Do you remember that?
Yeah. It's just a different, it's a different world now with how that stuff is approached, because everybody wants to show off how they did it.
Yeah, and I think they should be getting on my lawn.
I think to some extent the way that we approach, the collective, we approach raids, what does work to lessen the amount of time that it takes to beat them. I know in a lot of ways they have become more accessible, which typically means that they're easier in some way or another. But with everyone sharing stuff constantly all the time on social media, streaming on Twitch, uploading YouTube videos and things like that, that just sort of by the nature of it, it becomes easier for someone to learn how to beat it, because there's so much information about it. And that process happens a lot faster, because instead of having a guild of, 100 people, let's say, just for an easy number, figuring it out, and that having to be done every time for a while until someone does finally post a full video or a breakdown on a forum or something somewhere, everyone has to figure out how to do it on their own. Whereas that's no longer the case. Like, once the code is cracked, so to speak, it's out there for everybody. Mm-hmm. And multiple collaborators and sort of trial and error can be sped up a lot by, streaming and posting these videos and things. So some of it is definitely that. I don't think it's all down to changes in design, development, and accessibility. That's part of it, but another piece of the puzzle is we just share things a lot more via social media, streaming, and YouTube than was possible then. And that speeds it up just by nature of disseminated information. It's interesting, though. I mean, we've kind of went in a couple of different directions, but it does seem like the mechanics were designed with PC audiences more in mind, which is fine if you're going to do that, but then not compensate it in some way for the console players seems like bad game design. I mean, we joke about PC Master Race all the time on here because we're primarily PC players. I mean, you're exclusively PC.
Mm-hmm. Well, a little bit of mobile.
But, if you're developing a game for this massive audience, you want to try and take all of the different, or at least the most major differences in how the game will be played on different platforms into account. And even something as small as controller design between the Xbox and the PS4 could make
or
a
even
difference.
FPS, because the way it handles is that if there's and I don't know the actual raid mechanics for this, and I don't think you do either. But
no, I've never raided the Division.
But the fact that the extra precision seems to point towards either weak spots or some sort of timed shooting mechanic. So if there's so long that a weak spot is available for just easy way to say it. Yeah, let's say the glowing red spot, he takes damage only when it glows. Well, just the fact that the FPS difference between console and PC, either 60 or 30, or somebody that may be running 120, that reaction time takes into account. The amount of time it takes them to aim is a lot faster to aim with a mouse, ridiculously so. Unless there's some sort of snap to the controller, which it sounds like there isn't. Those two factors by themselves would make a raid on console that isn't compensated a lot more difficult.
Yeah.
And the fact that the console players were yelling and screaming about saying that it was impossible makes me think that, yeah, that sounds like it really wasn't designed for console players in mind. I don't think anybody tested this with a controller. Now, the fact that somebody eventually beat it, says to the contrary, but it took them 3 days of constant playing from the sounds of it. And for the final boss, it took them nearly a day. So, yeah, that tells me that something is going on there, right?
Yeah. I mean, it could have been that this is what they had in mind, though. Maybe it was designed that way on purpose, which doesn't excuse it. But if the idea was to make it more challenging, and then by virtue of PC being a better platform, whereas the consoles were maybe the target platforms, then the PC players found it easier than was intended, as opposed to console players finding it harder than was intended.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of when I was playing GTA San Andreas. Originally, I played it on the PlayStation 2, and I found it, it was playable, but there were certain aspects of it that were a little difficult, particularly the firing range, and there were some missions. When I eventually just got it on PC, I went to the shooting range, and I was expecting a challenge, and I just blew through it in one setting without really even thinking about it. And that's kind of drove home just when I was switching primarily to PC, just how much more difficult it is to aim with a controller, even when you're used to it and have a lock-on mechanic.
Yeah. So, we could be looking at this backwards. Like, the whole way we've approached this conversation is it was designed for PC and it was too hard on console. But what if the console experience was the intended experience? It was designed for console, and by that virtue, it was easier on PC. Which doesn't excuse it. I still don't think that excuses it. But it does, provided a different narrative.
It tells of just bad game design or a poor design choice when building this raid. On top of the fact that the loot is just head scratching to me.
Yeah. So, honestly, thinking about it, that's probably makes more sense.
Yeah, that possibly does. And it's just the console players were yelling about it, calling it impossible, while the PC players breezed through it, so everybody took it as, well, the PC was obviously the first choice for this, but maybe not. That is right.
I mean, PC is always the first choice for everything, though. Let's be real here. PC Master Race.
Well, unless you're Sony.
Yeah.
Or Nintendo, I guess.
Nintendo's special.
Well, Nintendo's also embracing mobile. Oh, that reminds me. I don't think I'm under NDA for it, but I did get an interesting email this week.
Okay.
Mario Kart.
On mobile?
You didn't know about this? They're doing a mobile Mario Kart.
No, I don't really pay attention to much news for anything that comes out on mobile.
Well, it's interesting at least.
Yeah.
And the fact that, I'm in the beta for it. I can't do screenshots or video of it, but I think I can talk about it. If I'm not allowed to talk about it, don't tell anybody.
Okay, I won't. I won't tell anyone. Okay, so ready to move on to our first of two news topics discussing Valve?
Yeah, let's go for it.
So the first of two things that Valve's in the news for this week, Valve's latest Steam blog addresses positive review bombing.
Yeah, a while back they put out a system that was attempting to silence the review bombs for off-topic reasons. A good one for KSP was it was the Chinese text. It took me a moment to remember the actual language that was causing the issue. That when they translated one of the things on the main menu, they used the wrong gender symbol and just got review bombed by the Chinese players because of it. Because, that's the sensible thing to do.
Review bomb?
Yeah. Or just general problems with the games, triggers review bombs. Epic Store exclusives have been a big one lately. See Borderlands 3.
Yeah.
So they put out a system in place that when there's a high number of negative reviews, it triggers a flag that they review why these reviews are taking place. And if it's considered off topic, they allow the reviews to go through still, but it doesn't affect the overall score of the game. But here's the oversight, is that negative reviews were the only ones that were triggering the thing. When Assassin's Creed Unity put out a free version of, or gave away the game for free following the Notre Dame fire, they got a positive review bomb. And Valve was left wondering, what do we do with this? So they put out a blog post, was it today? I think it was actually either today or yesterday. I know I just noticed the
21st, so today, yeah.
Yeah.
It's put out this morning.
Well, I noticed the thing on my Steam store, or my Steam client today, the megaphone. But I wasn't sure how long it was there. Talking about it. And they decided, since it wouldn't change much about the overall review, that their choice was to do nothing in this case, but they're kind of reconsidering their review bomb system in general, trying to figure out how to handle things, but are still taking things at a case-by-case basis for now. That's how I read it, at least.
Yeah, I also read it that way. Their whole review bombing thing, there's so few things that consumers can do.
Yeah, I was going to say, the reason why review bombs are such a thing is that there's no way for the average consumer to really speak out and have it seen. Because sure, you could join a hashtag on Twitter or something, but the people that are on the store page, they won't see that.
Yeah.
If you go to the forums, well, some of these developers have them locked down and will just mass delete things. There's no real way for a consumer to join their voices together to have an issue heard. So the fact that Valve could say, well, talking about DRM, that's off topic. Well, no, it isn't really. Because, that's still part of the game.
Yeah, it's a huge issue that can and often does affect the playability of a game, the stability of a game, which, I mean, is part of the playability, but...
the performance.
Yeah. And that's not something that's off topic, and it's something that's worth calling out. And there might be some people who don't care about that. That's fine. But lots of people do in the PC space.
Yeah, like, Rage 2, right before launch, they slapped de novo on just the Steam Store version. Well, if they didn't remove it immediately because this is Bethesda, so they implemented things poorly, they put a version without de novo on their own storefront, essentially trying to devalue the Steam version, which, my mad, dick move. Yeah. It led to that being cracked pretty much immediately, so they removed de novo. If that made the news rounds for a bit, that Bethesda was doing that as a publisher, I realize they aren't the developers of the game, but they are the publisher, that could have led to a review bomb, and then Valve would say, well, that's probably off topic, because that's not talking about the game itself, that's talking about the substructure of the game, because they have done that before, and they'll just mark all those as invalid. There's no real way to really get your voice heard unless you have a huge following. And even then, the big voices in gaming news, it feels like a lot of them are in the corporate pockets these days, doesn't it? I'm talking about the major gaming sites.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, hell, we have PC Gamer being endorsed by Epic at E3 because the PC Gamer show. I mean, that's a conflict of interest right there, right?
Yeah. It is. It definitely is.
So there's really no consumer voice in the major journalism outlets. There's no way for gamers to kind of bond together outside of review bombing, and, well, we're stuck with this because, there's just no way, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, the positive review bombs, it's the same deal, isn't it?
What do you mean by that?
Well, there's no way to really trying to support a developer doing something positive outside of doing the positive review bomb. But that is still off topic.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. It might be a little bit easier to support developers doing positive things with your wallet because it's much easier to notice spending money on something than not spending money on something. But other than that, I mean, yeah, I think that you're in the same sort of boat with that.
Yeah, I've seen people talk about being able to review publishers and developers directly on Steam, or even have a third-party site that is sort of like a Metacritic for developers and publishers. But I'm not sure if that's even a good idea, because then, how do you vote with that? Because, is it one person gets one vote? Is it somebody that has, all the games from that developer gets a lot of power because of it? What happens whenever they do one thing shitty, but everything else is all right? Well, everybody that supports all the other IPs will say, oh, well, that's perfectly fine because it's not my game. And that's another thing that you've run into a lot, isn't it? Especially with the big publishers. It's okay that they screw over all the sports guys because I'm not a sports fan.
Right.
There's just no real consumer advocacy at all, to the point where, and I hate bringing up Gamergate because I know that has been tainted just because the extreme right has kind of co-opted it. But that was the original purpose of it, was to try to get some sort of journalistic integrity going on. But that became such a joke that it's become sort of the calling card of, oh, well, gamer culture is trash because Gamergate. And it's irritating because you get the whole ecstasy in games journalism. Ha ha ha. Very funny, game indicator, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, just trying to think if I have any more.
Yeah, it's just very frustrating to be a gaming fan these days, just because it feels like there's nobody really standing up for you. You know?
Yeah.
There are some out there, but none of the major voices. And it's kind of funny that we had the trailer pop up for the year memorial of Total Biscuit as we're talking about this, huh?
Yeah.
Because he was the major voice.
Definitely the biggest one. Not the only one, but the biggest. And no one has really filled his shoes.
I mean, you do have some. Yeah, you do have some that's kind of filled in aspects, but no one that's done the full package to the point where they could grow. Because you do have Jim Sterling, but Jim Sterling at times brings his politics in a little bit too much and kind of taints his own arguments. You have Sid Alpha and Young Yeah, but both of them are a lot smaller. And because Sid Alpha focuses a lot more on indie games, he doesn't really get a lot more of the traction. Plus, he still has a day job, which, no, I'm not disparaging because of that. But at the same time, it does interfere with how many videos he can put out, which the algorithms hate. And Young Yeah tends to focus on one particular topic and just kind of hammer it to death. Plus, he has a very set format where he talks at length about the backstory of something, which a lot of people take as padding out his videos too much. Which at times, yes, it does pad it out too much, but at times, when you don't have the backstory, it's good to have it there without saying, okay, well, go watch this video, or go watch these two videos, right?
Yeah.
And those are the three that I've really gone to on YouTube, for the most part. For reviews, I've been going to Angry Centaur Gaming, ACG, but he hasn't been doing as much lately, or at least that I've been catching. Or it could just be YouTube screwing up again. So, yeah, it's just, there's no one really standing up for us, and it feels very disheartening.
Indeed it is.
And I think that also ties into the whole, I've seen a lot of people talk about how they're tired of angry game reviewers. I've seen this pop up a couple times on Reddit, just in comments and actually full on posts as well. But I think that anybody that pays a lot of attention to gaming, the gaming industry and how publishers have been treating gamers, I think anger is about the only emotion someone could really feel at this point. That's someone that has paid attention for quite a while.
Yeah, more negative emotions, not necessarily just anger, but more negative emotions. Yeah. Anger, disgust, frustration. So, I often feel that way about the gaming industry. But...
well, we ended up going on that for a lot longer than I thought.
Indeed. Let's discuss
so how about some anger in the gaming industry?
Sure. Valve lets players avoid toxic people in Dota 2 and charges them for the privilege.
Oh, Valve. So, this is tied into the Dota 2 Season Pass, which also funds their World Tournament. 25% of the funds goes directly into the prize pool. So, this is just wah, right?
Yeah.
Wah, 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 wah. So, tied into the Season Pass, there's a lot of different features. And there's actually two here that's like, what the hell, right? But the big one is the Avoid Player. And I'm just going to read this verbatim from their Battle Pass thing. All right? Avoid Player. Not all players and play styles work well together. To help keep your team chemistry balanced and fun, We've added an experimental avoid player list that guarantees you won't match with the player again. Designate players to avoid on the post-game screen to filter them out of your matchmaking pool. So this is pretty much just tag a player and you're never going to see them again. Something that should be in the game by itself.
Yeah, this is a standard feature that's in a lot of online multiplayer games. I mean, I remember it all the way back when I used to play, Halo and Gears of War and things on the Xbox 360. I'm sure it goes back farther than that, but being able to tag players is like, for multiple reasons why you don't want to play with them. Or even just a simple, checkbox, avoid player, yes or no. I can't think of a single online game I've played in a long time that doesn't let you avoid players like that for matchmaking.
Yeah, I haven't done a lot of multiplayer competitive games lately, but yeah, the only thing I can think of is they're using this as a beta test for the full feature. But even then, yeah, add it to the beta branch, right?
Yeah,
if they have a beta branch, of course. But the fact that you're paying $10 to beta test a feature, because that's what the Battle Pass is. It's $10, which is a little expensive for Battle Pass, isn't it? Aren't they usually about in the 5 to 7 range?
I don't think so. I think $10 is actually cheap.
I gotta admit, I don't do a lot of games with Battle Passes.
I think the Fortnite Battle Pass is $20.
Yeah, but that's also Epic.
I think the one for what's the EA one that got popular for a little bit?
Apex Legends?
Yeah, Apex Legends. I think that one was $20, 15 or $20.
Yeah, maybe I'm just thinking a little bit differently, because honestly, a lot of these battle passes feel like they're suckering you in, especially this one where you could actually pay. Okay, so the base one is $10, but you can pay $30 and skip half the levels of it. So you start halfway through with all the loot, or you can pay $45 and get up to level 100, which I'm actually not sure what the max level is. It's just head scratching to me,
Yeah.
Or you could buy 24 battle pass levels for $10 a pop. I just don't get it. Is this a case of maybe we're old?
Maybe. I'm looking up more information on the Fortnite Battle Pass and stuff right now. So it's 1,000 V-Bucks? I don't know how much a V-Bucks. Oh God. Oh, my antivirus just yelled at me. Apparently I opened a website that I should not have.
99 cents is 100 V-Bucks. So $10.
So it is $10 for the basic battle pass.
But here's the other thing is that Fortnite is in a weird position unless they changed it recently. Well, it's $9.99. Is that if you do well enough on the battle pass, you actually earn enough money back, or enough of the currency back to buy the next battle pass.
Yeah,
and essentially keep going. Like I said, that it used to be that way. I'm not sure if they've changed it or not. But yeah, it looks like there. How many? It says there's over 1,000 levels of this. By the way,
that seems like way too many. That's definitely a maybe I'm old kind of deal.
Yeah, I'm just seeing. Wow. Yeah, the max level is 2,000. And early on, you get a lot of stuff every level, and then it starts skipping. And some of these are, chat wheel sound packs, or getting a spray that's a dunk, or different cosmetic effects. Yeah, I think I'm just old.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, these battle passes that have 100 levels feel like a lot to me.
Yeah, if it was just a one-time 100 levels, I think I can understand that, but it's 100 levels every however many weeks. And that's
here's the other thing
for me to think about.
Here's the other thing to look at is, are these tradable? Because that is something, is that if they're tradable, then you can put them on the market and make back your money. Which is, the other thing. But we're kind of off topic where we're tied up on the battle pass, but the fact that they put a rather important feature tied behind this paywall is just dick move.
Yeah. Super dick move. Good job.
And I can't think of a good excuse for it. I mean, even beta testing. Because they said an experimental feature. So I imagine eventually this will come out. But I don't like the fact that you're pre-ordering to get into the beta stress test for games these days. Let alone buying a battle pass to get a very basic feature like this.
Yeah. I don't like buying into beta tests or beta periods or whatever. Pre-order to get beta access. No, thank you. But again, I'm a grumpy, cynical old man at this point. So,
and you also don't want to break commandment number 1.
Nope. Thou shalt not pre-order. Okay. So, are you ready to move on to our final news topic of the night?
Yeah, I think so. This one's kind of I would say a little bit of an amusing one, because this is an area of this that I didn't really consider at first.
So, loot box laws are shutting down 2 Nintendo mobile titles in Belgium.
Yeah, they're getting the Belgium dunk, right?
Yeah. So they're pulling Fire Emblem Heroes and Animal Crossing Pocket Camp from mobile stores, and they're not going to be available after August 27th.
At all.
At all. And it's because of Belgium laws regarding in-game revenue models or revenue streams. And they classify them as being... Does it say specifically that they are loot boxes or enough like them that it matches their definition?
Let me go into the game industry biz, because I had a little bit better. Let's see. In a statement via Google Translate, Nintendo said that it would be taking Animal Crossing, Pocket Camp, and Fire Emblem Heroes offline in Belgium due to the unclear situation requiring certain in-game revenue models. So they're not breaking the law per se, but it's unclear. And I'm not sure about Animal Crossing, but I think you played it. I know Fire Emblem Heroes, it didn't have loot boxes per se, but it's a gacha game. So technically, this is something that would be considered a loot box by a different definition, or a different, essentially a different coat of paint, because that's what you're really looking at here is a randomized progression.
So just to let you know Animal Crossing, you get like these leaf tickets, I think is what they're called. Oh yeah, it says here leaf tickets, and you can spend those tickets on. They're not loot boxes. I think they're fortune cookies or something like that, like an Animal Crossing themed. But anyways, you get randomized loot drops from those things like furniture for your camp and stuff like that. There's different rarities, and you can buy the leaf tickets to spend on opening the fortune cookies. So it's not a competitive thing, but it is a loot box that just goes by a slightly different name.
Which is kind of the gacha mechanic from Fire Emblems.
Yeah. Because it's all about the rarity of the thing that you're getting. Although in Fire Emblem, with there being the competitive, like the higher level things or the higher rarity things are always stronger. So that seems a little more clear in the case of Fire Emblem.
Mm-hmm.
But if Nintendo's the one who's pulling the games, they might just be like, you know what, we're just going to err on the side of caution with these guys.
Yeah, and also I'd imagine Belgium's not a big enough market to really worry about, so they're playing safe here.
Yeah. I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily jump to that conclusion. It's a possibility. But Nintendo games kind of transcend a lot of traditional,
True.
I don't know, barriers or
and this is also a mobile game, so it has a lot lower barrier to entry.
Yeah.
I mean, do you not have phones?
I don't think that's ever going to go away.
No, it isn't. Not on my watch, at least.
Not on my watch.
But at least it's relevant here. So, but yeah, just because it's a low barrier to entry and a free to play game, maybe it would be a better market for them. But Belgium still only has a population of 11 million.
I would say that they did a cost-benefit analysis,
mm-hmm.
and the potential fines and lawsuits are not worth the profit that exists, or the potential profit that exists in that market, and that's why they pulled it. Because companies break laws all the time, because they make more money than they have to spend on the fines.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, I think Nintendo, in a lot of ways, is a better company than others in the gaming industry. But at the end of the day, they're still a profit-driven company.
Yeah, I'm just comparing Belgium to a few other countries. Like, Google comes up with Netherlands has 17 million versus Belgium's 11, with Switzerland having 8.4. The UK right now has 65.8 million. But can we really compare them to Belgium in a couple months? Maybe, right?
Yeah.
That's also something that's never going to go away, is it?
No, definitely not.
Yeah. I mean, Belgium's not a microscopic market, but it's definitely not the largest market in the EU.
Yeah. It's not a...
I mean, it's not exactly France.
I was gonna say, it's not France, it's not the UK, it's not Germany.
Well, France has 66 million right now. And it's not like Italy that's has another 60 million. Matter of fact, if you just if I take EU, it just gives me the total population of the EU. That's not what I wanted. I wanted everyone. But yeah, it's not a major market, but I think you're right that they did the cost-benefit analysis and just saw that this law may be a problem in the future. It's better to pull it now. And part of me wonders, and maybe this is me being cynical, which there's a shock, that do you think that they're pulling the game suddenly, trying to drum up anger at this particular situation? I mean, if it was EA, I'd say definitely yes, but Nintendo I'm not so sure about.
I don't know. I'd probably be willing to believe it if you had some kind of evidence to back it up. I'm not willing to say that right offhand.
Yeah, now if it was EA, definitely, right?
Oh yeah, no, if it was EA, I wouldn't think twice about it. I would have already had that conclusion before you asked the question.
I mean, EA has asked people to write into the Belgian lawmakers, say that you want your card packs in FIFA. And I wish I was joking about that.
No, I remember when they did that last year.
Which, it is their right, but it makes them look like dicks.
Well, they probably don't really care about that. They look like dicks 24/7 anyways.
Well, I was about to say, it's not exactly, a new look for them. It'd be nice if they changed their look, the summer fashion trends are coming out. But no, but yeah, it's going to be interesting as more loot box legislation comes out. Just if this is going to have unintended consequences for other business models that are a lot like loot boxes that we really didn't consider, like the gacha mechanics, which, this is still, a loot box by any other name, right?
Yeah. It's a different flavor.
Yeah, this is just something I didn't really consider. I mean, I'm not exactly weeping over it, but at the same time, it makes me wonder, depending on how the laws are written, what else may be impacted. And that's why I was a little hesitant to want to bring in the rule of law, but it's about the only way this is going to happen. Because the game industry has proven time and time again that they cannot help themselves.
Yeah.
They
like we were talking about last week. You have
they
to set some serious specific language for better or for worse. That way you at least have a framework to operate under.
Yeah, the fact that the phrase money left on the table is such a thing in the major publishers should tell you just the mindset that's going on and why I would say a lot of people that pay attention to the industry are having negative emotions about it. It's not discussed at playing games. It's discussed at how the gamers are being treated.
Yeah. How much can we milk the gamers for this week?
Speaking of milking things, I think we've milked this one enough, don't you?
Probably. So let's head on over towards Community Corner, which this week, do we have any tweets or anything?
Not that I saw.
Okay, neither did I. So really that just leaves us with a quick little discussion about Game Night.
Yeah, Game Club's next week.
Which I said at the top of the show, we're going to be playing Pandemic on Tabletop Simulator in 2 weeks. Next week, I'm going to be gone. So I am not hosting a game night, or not, putting one together. We've got some ideas for more board games on Tabletop. I've also considered doing a movie night. And it doesn't specifically have to be a video game movie. It could just be in something that we roughly agree on. I've got a pretty big library of ripped digital movies that I would share. There's also Netflix. I don't know if everyone has Netflix, but it's a pretty common thing. Or, some streaming service we could all get on.
Well, I was going to say, remember the mirroring tool, Rabbit? Yeah.
So we could try that as well. We never really actually tried it out, but I think a movie night would be fun. Mix it up, and such. But 2 weeks we'll be doing Pandemic again. Anyone who's got some feedback on whether or not you'd like to try movie night or what sort of streaming services you do have, things like that, just go ahead and feel free to send those in to us, either on Discord or via our email, which is Rage? I almost said your real name. I don't know why.
VGLpodcast@gmail.com, or you can just tweet us, VGL Podcast, on the Twitter.
Yeah, I don't know why I almost just said your actual name. Like, I know it. I've known it for years, but I always just call you Rage in common parlance with everyone.
I don't know.
Maybe I was thinking of you.
Hey, I'm not the shrink here.
Maybe I was thinking of you in a respectful manner.
Well, there's a first.
I was going to say for the first time ever. Okie dokie.
Music?
Indeed.
And, for the first time ever, I have a good game to kick things off. Oh, wait.
I don't even have my Discovery Queue pulled up yet. I'm navigating towards that right now.
I was waiting for it. So, I've had time with A Plague Tale: Innocence. Follow the grim tale of young Amelia and her little brother Hugo in a heart-rending journey through the darkest hours of history. This looks very interesting. So it has a lot of a Brother, A Tale of Two Sons vibe about it. Just the tone that they're kind of setting with this. You're trying to tend to your sick younger brother. They are calling it a walking simulator, which is a little troublesome, but that's not a bad thing. That's not an instant, never play. Full-priced game for the most part. It's $45, in the high AA range, but actually it has a pretty interesting aesthetic to it. It has a very dark, brooding feel about it. I don't recognize the studio offhand. They've done some licensed stuff. They have Disney Pixar's WALL-E on Steam. So this looks like one of their first, if not their first, independent IPs.
Mm-hmm. They've got Sean Bean doing a trailer.
Well, we know who's going to die.
I saw an interview that they did, or that someone did with him. I don't remember.
Did they kill him?
No, but they asked, like, what film, TV have you been in where you haven't died? And it was like 3 things. Everything else he's died in at some point or another. But I saw something that Jim Sterling put up about this game, and I've been meaning to watch it, and I just haven't gotten to it yet.
I didn't see that yet.
It's just like one of his like quick looks or whatever. Gimpressions, that's what it is. It's one of his Gimpressions videos.
Yeah, I just looked at yours, and I'm pretty sure that's on my queue, just because it's giving me my queue interface. But go for it.
Yeah, so the my first game, actually, Swag and Sorcery.
This looks like a phone game, just from the interface.
Yeah, maybe, but it looks interesting. Grind for resources, manage your own fantasy village, create and equip your heroes, and send them to collect swag and Sorcery. New streamlined RPG from the creators of Punch Club and Graveyard Keeper. Both of which are fun, interesting games to play.
Published by Tiny Build. Tiny Build has a Humble Bundle going on right now, by the way.
Oh, that's right. The Humble Bundle rollover. I was meaning to go check it out.
Yeah, I'm going to grab the tier 1 for Punch Club.
But
that's the only one that I don't have out of the $1 tier.
But yeah, I mean, this looks like a really interesting sort of different type of RPG. It's got multiple active windows or active questing. I don't know how to describe exactly what I'm looking at. Yeah, parties. Multiple active parties at once that are running through dungeons, ? There's the management aspect.
Yeah, there's some definite mixed reviews on this.
But
it looks like it may be an idle game.
I mean, I would
a management game
that
there's too little to do. As an idle game, there's too much to do. So an active idle game.
I mean, I like to play idle games. I think that makes it much more niche than it initially seemed like it was to me. But, you know, I like idle games for when I'm at work and things, and one that's maybe a little more active so that I'm not just, like, sitting there all the time, not doing anything, appeals to me. So.
I as well have a game with a pedigree. I'm just trying to figure out if this is what I think it is. What?
This is real. I thought this was fake.
What?
Okay, I'm dropping the link in now.
Well, while you do that...
Yeah, so this is Snaky Bus.
Oh, yeah, I'll let you do that one, then I'll continue on mine.
So I saw something about this on Reddit, and I just thought it was like a bullshit thing that somebody put together really quick. But it's the classic game Snake, but rendered in 3D and a bus. So you're chasing your tail as a bus, and it just gets stupid ridiculous with how big the bus gets and like all the weird like wacky stunts that you can pull off to, you know, avoid running into yourself and killing yourself. It just looks silly, but also incredibly fun. So, yeah, you just have to go watch it. Go watch the trailer for it, or go watch the I guess the GIF that they've got on the store page. And I think you'll know pretty immediately if this looks like a game that looks interesting to you or not. And it definitely looks interesting and fun and silly to me. It's $10, which for what this is feels like too much money. You know, this feels kind of like Goat Simulator in terms of like play it for a little while because it's wacky. You know, experience the different things it has to have, and then probably not play it again. But you know, if you decide to buy it, it's your money. You pay what you want for it. That's not my call. But I don't think I would spend $10 on this. But $5 easy. And then if I could somehow get it for free, that would be a no-brainer for me. But, alright. What about,
Alright, well, I have Druidstone, The Secret of Manor Forest. A tactical turn-based RPG from the makers of Legend of Grimrock.
Interesting.
There's some people that are calling this more like Into the Breach, which is more of a puzzle game. But it has a very pretty art style to it on some of these screenshots. But yeah, it looks like the team behind Legends of Grimrock made a new studio called Control Alt Ninja Limited.
Okay.
Let's see. Tactical turn-based and tile-based battle system where every action and every turn counts. Upgrade the abilities of your heroes. And your upgrade choices have a direct impact on your character's abilities. That's kind of new, right?
Yeah.
It feels like a rebuilding of the old classic CRPGs with more tactical turn-based combat. So yeah. Once again, the developers behind Legend of Grimrock taking an old formula and refreshing it. They are saying 15 to 20 hours on a $25 game. That's actually not too bad. So yeah, square in the AA price range. I would say it's worth a check out. You got another one?
Yep, Pax Nova. This is a sci-fi turn-based 4X strategy game where you are trying to rebuild. Like it says, where you lead one of several factions divided between 3 races. But looking at this, it looks like there's been something that's happened, and you're rebuilding in this new solar system. You're having to explore all the planets, and it looks like it starts out on a planet, then you expand up into space, and then you go back down onto other planets. It looks very much in playstyle like Civ. It draws a lot of inspiration from, I would say, Civ 5 with the hex system, the way that it looks. But it's got events that pop up very much like Galactic Civilizations does. I like the idea of starting on a planet and building up into space and sort of having the game evolve as it goes, as long as it's handled well. But I mean, I'm a sucker for anything that's space and also anything that's 4X. So,
anything that's early access?
Yeah, this looks like something that's right up my alley in terms of all the categories that it hits. So, I'm in. It's got mostly positive reviews, although it's not been out, air quotes, out for very long, so.
Okay, well, I have Iron Marines, a real-time strategy with it feels almost a little tower defense, but that may be just some of the screenshots they have showing a more Turley style. Looks like older school campaign based, which you don't see a lot of these days. Well, you don't see many RTS in general these days. It's more of the Diablo or MOBA style these days. So the fact that we're seeing a full-on RTS is a rather refreshing change of pace. It's single-player focus with a decently long storyline, it looks like. It has an interesting art style, and I can't quite place where I've seen this before. It feels familiar. It feels like some of the old Flash games in its art style. Maybe it's just the exaggerated feel of it, you know?
Yeah.
That would be why. It's from Ironhide Studios, which did Kingdom Rush. That's why it feels familiar. And probably why I'm associating it with Tower Defense, because that's what they did. So that explains things, doesn't it?
Indeed.
That's a very distinctive art style that they have. I was getting that vibe just from the screenshots, though. But yeah, according to this, 21 campaign missions across 3 different worlds, with 21 special operations with their own combat rules and no mercy at all. Unlock the impossible mode only for the most reckless of the dauntless. So yeah, and it looks like they're using the the Warcraft 3 model where you have a particular hero that is a lot more powerful. They were showing the ability to power up things. Or maybe that's just their research system. It's a little tough to tell. But yeah, definitely something to check out if you're for an RTS. And yeah, things have been a little stingy there.
What? So this is just pure pornography. Like, literally just porn.
Yeah, and they're swagging sorcery, by the way.
N-
What, you're not even sharing?
no, I'm getting there right now.
I'm not going to put it in
Trainer VR. You can put that link or remove it. I'll let you make the call. But there you go. Nympho Trainer VR. What just... So, for some reason...
That's not even well-drawn porn.
No, but it is just pure pornography. My videos started auto-playing, like, not just on this one. Like, during this Discovery Queue, my videos have been auto-playing for some reason, because I've got it set to where they're not supposed to do that. And I looked away for a second, and I just hear, oh, and I look over, and it's like, that's just fucking. Like, that's just sex. I'm like, okay.
Yeah,
cool.
I'm ruling no on that one.
Yeah, that's too risque, because it is just literally pornography. It's what this is. And that's fine. Enjoy your pornography. But we probably shouldn't put that link in our show notes.
How about some nostalgia instead? The Castlevania Anniversary Collection.
Castlevania.
I mean, is there really anything to talk about on Castlevania these days? Outside of fuck Konami?
I don't think so.
I mean, that's kind of the downside of getting this, is that you're giving them money, but at the same time, you're showing that, hey, maybe you should actually be doing games again, right? So kind of damn if you do, damn if you don't. There are some people talking about it's not a great version, so maybe you want to go emulation instead, but it's something, right?
Yeah.
Hey, it's probably about the only way you're going to get Castlevania these days. So I'll put it on nonetheless.
So that's my queue. I had technically 4, but only 3 of them we're going to put on there.
Yeah.
But, I mean, 3 is pretty good from a single queue for me. I had some good stuff on there.
Oh, well, I'm still going. I cannot be stopped. Death End Request. A JRPG that looks somewhat interesting. Death End Request takes the classic turn-based RPG and flips it upside down. Switch between the RPG action of the game world and the visual novel segments of the real world. So, so a visual novel / JRPG. I mean, something that we've seen, a bit before, but interesting. Similar to games that I have. Honey Pop.
Sure. Makes sense. Somehow.
Sorry, I don't have... Oh, this developer has done a lot of JRPGs, so I'll probably have something of theirs. They are doing the annoying thing where they translate the title, but then they still have the original Japanese, so, you have... Well, to us, gibberish on everything.
Yeah.
Let's see. The developers describe this content like this on the mature content description. One of the features of this game is the attainment of several bad endings, which can range from graphically gory scenes to vivid textural depictions of character deaths. Watching a decapitation scene or reading an excerpt about a character's spinal cord being torn out. Well, finish them. This game contains content that may not be appropriate for all ages, including the following: blood, violence, suggested themes, and strong language. So, interesting thing. A JRPG that's a little bit more mature.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. I'd be down. I haven't played a good JRPG in about a year now.
Yeah, that's crap. Why does this look familiar? I think I may have seen this somewhere. But let's add it nonetheless. It's a decent looking point and click, and it's at least decent reviewed, but it has hardly any posts on it. So why the hell not? Irony Curtain. So, things are going to be fun already. From Mitoskria with Love.
Irony Curtain. I like that.
Yeah, I'm seeing what it looks like. Well, this is another developer that has a lot of stuff, but a lot of hidden object games, but pretty well versed on Steam by this point. So, Irony Curtain is a satirical point-and-click inspired by the classic adventure game. So, essentially making fun of the old point-and-click game. So, that could be interesting, actually, depending on how they do it, of course. Looks like it has some pretty good reviews overall. So, I would say it's worth at least a look, especially if you could pick it up on sale. Because it's still a $20, parody game, and I don't know how long it is. And parody is definitely something that is very hit or miss.
Yeah.
See, VR title, I'll just skip. Another VR title that I'll definitely skip because it's Fallout. And I got Sneaky Bus for my last one. Told you it was on there because I saw my queue interface. So yeah, that is my queue. I got a couple. Right?
Yeah, you're just in the dregs compared to how previous weeks have gone.
Well, I could always go do another one.
No, I'm good. I'm good. We're fine. We're all fine here.
How are you?
How are you? All right.
I didn't get to watch a Star Wars movie for May the 4th. I wanted to watch Spaceballs, but it was taken off everywhere. That's the downside of doing the subscription stuff, huh?
Yeah.
I thought about doing solo, but I thought, I think that's probably a bad idea.
Yeah. Solo's okay. It's not great. It's kind of meh.
Well, it has to be better than Life Day, right?
But at least that's like bad in a way you can laugh at.
Especially if you start watching the Riff Tracks version of it. He's eating his own nose!
So, with Discover Queue out of the way, we're at the part where I say, hey Rage, hit him with the socials.
Well, I've been Caffeine Rage. You can find me on the YouTubes, Gaming with Caffeine Rage. You can find me on Twitter, Gaming with CR. And maybe someday you'll find me on Twitch once again. That's something I keep putting off. And you've been?
Gaming Psychologist. You can find me on YouTube by search for Gaming Psychologist. You can follow me on Twitter at JMA4707. And if you want to be my friend on Steam, send a friend request to JArthur4707.
If you wish to let them know exactly what episode of the podcast you're coming from, the password for this week is Dinky. Dinky. Just something I grabbed off my list completely randomly because I didn't set something aside.
I like Dinky. That's cute.
Yeah, I have to admit that there's been many times that I'll hear a word and I'll just stop and just add it to the list. And some of them are even not obscene. Or obscene sounding. But, once again, if you wish to contact us, you can do so, vglpodcast@gmail.com, with your letters, your voicemails, your gaming-related topics, or your questions, or you can tweet them to us, VGL Podcast on the Twitter. If you wish to become one of our lovely, lovely patrons, you can do so over at patreon.com/VGL Podcast. And our patrons have paid for our Podbean account, vglpodcast.podbean.com. Which hosts the RSS feed, the show notes, links to all our stuff online, and I do mean all of it. Or you can find us on iTunes, Google Play, or your podcatcher of choice. Our intro and outro music is On the Ground by Kevin McLeod, and our Discovery Queue music is Doobly Doo by the same artist. You can find his work over at incompetech.com, and...
as always, as his lovely music starts to roll across my voice. Well, bye now.
See you next time.